That would definitely be. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
we'll start with
live. Yeah. So, H, you want to kick us off today? I'm so excited to be with you guys.
Sure. So we've been on this journey talking about the last time, and this time, really, what's your building your leadership brand? And so last time what did we talk about last time? Why it's important to have a brand?
Why it's important. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, one of the things when I do the leadership brand training or work, coaching, I talk about the P's of building your leadership brand, right? So the first P is your power source. What are your strengths? What do you care about? What are you good at? And then the next P is your purpose. And that's what we want to talk about today is really anchoring your brand in a purpose. And that work is true whether I'm working with leaders or whether I'm actually working with marketing groups on their brand. We'll do purpose work with brands. Why does the brand exist? So I'm going to show some slides, I think.
And while you're getting those ready, why don't we introduce ourselves? I'll introduce, and then we'll also remind our audience that feel free to jump in the comments and add
Please.
your questions. We've had some great engagement in the last couple of weeks. The topic of personal branding is something that a lot of leaders don't really think about because they're working in corporate or even entrepreneurs have thought about it a little bit, but they don't really have a roadmap. So I'm excited about the roadmap that we've got today. My name is Dana Williams, and I help leaders transform their lives and their companies from the inside out. And I'm excited about being here with H and Micah today. So, Micah, I'll kick it off to you, and you can introduce yourself.
My name is Micah Lawrence. I always feel like I need to slow down for my last name because that's not what people expect to hear. Micah Lawrence. I am an ICF certified coach and a Gallup certified strengths coach. And I work mostly with startup founders and small business owners, do leadership coaching with them and team development workshops with their teams. H, why don't you introduce yourself before you jump in? And we can see your screen, just so you know.
Yeah.
You can? Good. I can see.
Yes.
Well, because I can't see you now, so that's
that's fine.
That's okay. You don't need to see us.
I like to see your reactions. All right. Hi, I'm H. Muir. That's my name. My business is called Lift Shop. I work with brands, teams, and organizations to give them a lift. Lift stands for leadership ideas through facilitation and training. So brand leadership, brand ideas, brand facilitation, brand training, yada yada yada.
Yada yada yada.
You know what's funny, H? I didn't even think about this from our last conversation, but I've been thinking seriously about rebranding my own coaching practice from being my name to something a little bit more generic that would allow me to scale over time if I want to. I didn't even think to ask you about ideas about how do I rebrand my business. So I'll come back to that.
Ooh, and I have some thoughts on that too.
Yeah.
So
let's just talk about that today.
Yeah, we can do a whole.
We can do a whole thing on let's coach Micah on his brand.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my God.
We could do that.
Okay.
We'll save that. We'll save that. Yeah.
We
got some good stuff.
Ideation session on.
And just do it on LinkedIn Live and we'll just
let people pop in because I will tell you, there is a big thing about, that your brand is, everything's a commodity. So your brand, you've got to be you. So I'll leave it at that. That will be your teaser for when we coach Micah on building his brand. So
love it.
But today we're going to talk about you, right?
Back to our regularly scheduled program.
That's right. So H, can you see the screen?
I can see the screen. I just can't see you all. So just to remind, this is what we're kind of on this journey of talking about leadership brand. Last time we talked about power. This time we'll talk about purpose. We're also going to talk about values coming up. So these are my 4 Ps when I do leadership brand. So today, because we're talking about purpose, and this is really, it's why you lead, right? So what is purpose?
Hey, H, it's not going from slide to slide like last time. I think we had this problem too.
It looks like it. Yeah, there you go. Now it is.
All right, let's do it this way.
Yeah, you're gonna have to click it.
Interesting.
It's showing us the side too of the whole slide.
Yeah, well, that's what I had it on slideshow before. Does this work?
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't work. Okay, we'll go back to this.
I love how we're sharing.
Yeah, we're making it work.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. That's okay.
See, we're
That's not
getting
a
high
lot.
tech because we didn't have slides, up until last time.
Yeah,
So we're
right.
very, we're progressing here.
We're trying new
So,
territory.
and part of personal branding is being authentic and raw. So we're being raw today. So here you go.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we should have an entire conversation about the word authentic.
Yes, I
Yes.
agree.
Yes.
We're
Because it's
coming up with all sorts of ideas for
okay. I'm
future.
putting up, we
Yeah.
have ideation, so we got to
Putting
be
that one
careful.
out, put that one on the books
Yeah.
because I have a lot. I
Okay.
have thoughts.
I have
Authentic.
opinions too.
I do
Yeah.
too.
All right,
Okay.
so let's talk back to purpose. Why do you
Yes.
lead? And so, it really, in doing this work, you want to answer the questions: what do you contribute? Who benefits? And what does it enable? So, I'm going to show you some examples, but it's really thinking about if your power comes from your strengths, your skills, and what you're passionate about. How do you put that to work, and who benefits from it? And what does it enable? So, it might, and we'll show you some examples, but it might be, that your well, I'll talk about mine, but I give leaders a lift through learning. So what I contribute is learning and giving them a lift. Who benefits are leaders, and then what does it enable them to do? So really talking about what does it enable leaders to do. That's one example.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. So a couple other this was in a Fast Company article last year that I thought was really interesting. It's really about
Hmm.
brands and purpose-driven brands, but I think it applies to leaders as well. That when you're anchored in a purpose, 75% are more likely to trust the company, 78% more likely to remember. You can read the rest of those. But I thought that if it's true, maybe it's a question. If it's true for an organization, is it true for a leader?
For
I tend
leaders.
to think it is.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it seems obvious from a brand
Mhm.
perspective. We all know brands that we trust or that we like more because of the purpose behind the brand and the fact that we know their purpose.
Well, and I think purpose is so important because it really goes to the heartbeat of what you're here to do. And so many people haven't taken time to figure that out, whether they're a big
Hmm.
brand, they might figure it out, but that they're not emotionally connecting to their customers because they haven't talked about it enough. And in personal branding, it's about, what is that? Because your purpose will show up every 15 seconds, according to research. If you're living in that flow and you're living in who you are. So people buy what people,
Yeah.
that emotion, right?
Well, I think the key to what you're just saying is that they're living their brand. And there's a
Right.
difference between a brand who has a purpose, who's documented or just, defined a
Yeah.
purpose versus a purpose-driven brand. And I think the distinction I'm trying to make is that they actually live their brand.
Right.
So they're purpose-driven in that they are living what they've written versus, oh, we wrote a purpose, but we never talk about it. We don't live it, and our
And
values don't come through.
and those people left a long time ago that created it, and that's not us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's why it's so important when I do the brand work. I start with the first P is your power, right? And that's your
Mhm.
strengths, your personality, and your values, right? So if it's
Mhm.
who you are, what you're good at, and what you believe in or care about, your
Yeah.
purpose should be anchored in that. If not,
Agreed.
it's going to be energy draining, is the language I use to live your purpose
Mhm.
if it doesn't
Mhm.
align with those things. Um,
Agreed.
the other thing that I think is interesting is in 2020, right before the pandemic, I don't know how many Fortune 500 companies it was. It was probably close to 200 got together and said that, that business and organizations have to be more than just people, profits, and planets. They have to be purpose. And purpose driven and what that essentially says is that we have to be more than just making money. We have to put back in the
Yeah.
world. And I think that's true for individuals, for leaders as well. It's one of those, we don't trust people, we don't trust leaders who are out for themselves. So leading a purpose life makes you more trustworthy as a leader because you're not out for yourself. So that's one of the things that as we get into this is to think about who do I contribute to? And
Yeah.
before I even go any further, I'll stop there because I think one of my big ahas was I was doing a leadership brand course, and I was talking about, all right, we got to the purpose exercise, and I said, who do you contribute to? And this, never forget, the guy's name was Paul, looks at me, goes, I'm a project manager. Who I contribute to are projects. And I was like, whoa. That's, you know, so
Mm,
the contribution was to the project and keeping it. I'll never
Yeah.
forget, he goes, it's on time, on track, on goal. You know, it was kind of like, so his purpose and his pitch was all about being on, but
Yeah.
on those things, right? And I thought that was really interesting that
Huh.
the purpose was not just about the who, but in this case, it was about the what. So,
That's cool.
that's so interesting because you really, when people are attracted to you, it's the energy you're bringing. And if a project manager is just focused on paper and things and not the relationships, as you talk about with Rise, relationships influencing strategic thinking and executing. It sounds like he was really focused on the executing and not the relationship. So he probably didn't even see himself in that framework.
yeah, and you know what the thing is, that's okay. You know, as long
Yeah.
yeah, it's
As long as they
fine.
recognize it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not that he neglected relationships. He was just like, I'm all about, you know, my focus is project. Which, having just bought a computer and having had gone through the geek squad who canceled my first appointment, I
Mm,
want my next appointment. I want that person's purpose to be all about my computer and technology,
Yeah.
because obviously
It's
I'm
not.
not tech savvy.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want to know how you guys help your clients develop their or write their purpose statement. But I also know H had some examples he wanted to share. But I
Yeah.
want to make sure we have time for that because I want to hear your approach to helping people
Yeah.
define their purpose.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
I this it's a great lead in, right? If it's about why you lead, then, you know, describe what you do for whom. And I think this, to me, this is it captures the benefit of your leadership, right? And so when I do the power exercise,
Mhm.
Micah, you know, and I say, all right, what are you, you know, if we have your strengths and we know that, we know what you care about, what you're passionate about, and we know, you know, your personality and what you're good at, right? So
Mhm.
there's all of this information. Then I do a benefit sort. What is the benefit of your leadership given all of these things? You know, and they
Hmm.
work in there's like, so you could say, you know, all my strengths are in execution. Um, but my personality is introverted. That's a different benefit than if all your strengths are in execution and your personality is highly extroverted. So
Yeah.
you
What's
it's
an example of if I were to say the benefit of my leadership as an extrovert with executing strengths is? You
that's
have
why
you
you
have one?
that here's let me give you the other thing I do is give people construct and context. Oh, that's not it. Hold on. And now watch, I won't be able to find it.
So it's interesting how we all take different approaches.
Yeah.
My futuristic with people in finding their purpose is for them to go and do some soul work on what their legacy is that they want to leave.
Yeah.
By the time that they leave this earth, what is that legacy? And then we work backwards and we reverse engineer it and we have them develop, a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, take it down to a year, 6 months, 90 days, 30 days,
Yeah.
so that they're, um, but I want to point my futuristic, of course, wants to get them to that future
Yeah.
endpoint. Um,
I do a little bit of that too, but
yeah,
I don't get as tactical.
yeah, and
Um,
and then I have them write a story in second
oh,
person about who
cool.
they
Okay.
are, and that has been life changing for a lot of people, because the way we talk to ourselves, because we
Yeah.
talk to ourselves kind of like, darn Dana, no, no. But this way we say Dana is a person
Yeah.
who,
See,
and so that's my approach. But that's
well,
why I love all these different
yeah, there's no
suggestions.
one way. Yeah,
No.
I'd love to talk about the story because I think one of the things that has changed over the years I've been doing this is when you tell your story as a leader, we have traditionally put ourselves as the hero, and
Mhm.
that is no longer the case.
Right.
Or it is, if you put yourself as hero, then the people you lead, the organizations you lead, are dependent on you to save them. And
Yeah.
that's certainly not what younger workers are looking for. And I think it's an outdated model. So that's, how do I engender heroic from performances from the people or organizations I lead? I think
Mhm.
that's a really interesting
Yeah.
spin.
I'm glad you brought that up,
Cool.
H, because I think, and I think Don Miller teaches this in StoryBrand, but the story is always about you as the guide and not the hero. And I think when people know that, because they come in the room and try to talk about themselves, but you're solving the problem and you're the guide to help them
Mhm.
do that.
Well,
And I think,
how you guide, right? This gets into archetypal stuff, which is what I've
yeah,
got. Can you see this on the screen?
yeah. Now we
Yes.
can see.
Yeah. So these are one of the things I talk about is what role do you play as a leader? 'Cause and this gets into good, better, best, benefit, right? So if they're struggling to figure out the benefit of their leadership, then I'll say, write down all the roles that you play, or to your point, Dana, you want to your legacy, what you want to be known for. What are the roles you want to be known for as a leader? By the way, here's a list. Here's another list.
Mhm.
And then it's the question is there's probably more than a handful. So then we do good, better, best.
Mm,
That's the benefit sort I do, which saying some of these you're just going to be good enough at parity with other leaders. There's one
mhm.
or two you'll be better than other people, but there should just be one role or one benefit that you are best at. And
Oh, that's cool.
I do that with organizations and with brands and make them because if you're purveyor of many, then you're master of none.
Yeah.
And I love that you have this list for them because then it
Mhm.
helps them guide them because they were like out of their head, can't think of things like this, right? So
Yeah.
I think this is really helpful.
And I think one of the things that I find that's really is like, okay, when they do their benefits sort and we parent share and they share that out and they focus on their best, I'm like, okay, now how do you make that best differentiate? And a lot of it is so, like I want to be an architect of people's careers. Okay, what kind of architect do you want to be? Give me an adjective. Talk about how your personality and your passions and your values show up in that. And you start to play with that, right? So that they find, that's really the art of it is finding what is meaningful to them.
Yeah, and I think that would be a really powerful combination with Dana's
Mhm.
storytelling approach as well. If
Mhm.
you took some of those terms that or the roles that they feel like resonate with them in their good, better, best, and incorporate those into the story and how that what that means for them, it would
Well,
bring clarity to their purpose that may be different even from someone else who chose some of the same roles.
I was doing the good,
Mhm.
better, best benefit sort, and someone who was a content um, marketer, right, said, "Well, that's what we do when we develop web pages. That your
Ah,
best is in the headline and takes up the entire first paragraph,
mhm.
maybe even the second paragraph. Then it's your better is in a paragraph, and then good is just table stakes, right? And
Yeah.
that's just the fine print. Now that maybe
Mhm.
is at the bottom, right, where you go, it sounds like any other category that you compete in. And I think that it's kind of like that's the thing with leadership. So it's an interesting way to think about when you write your story or developing your web page, right? Is put it in that order.
Yeah.
I think another point to that, H, and I know you and Micah would agree with this, is that people try to put their whole story everywhere. And one of my recommendations is once you write that story, then create your one liner.
Yeah.
And I was looking at some corporate leaders, one liners in LinkedIn, and I saw some really good ones and I saw some really long, or you can't be too long, but just vague ones that didn't make sense. So I think that's a piece of this too, is being able to pull out that one liner and be able to say that.
Yeah, so the P's that I talk about, that's your pitch, right? Your
Right.
story is
At
your
the end.
pitch, and then you have a tagline, if you can get it to a tagline, which is and Micah, this is why I liked having a name of my business,
Hmm.
'cause it gives me permission to have a tagline where if I say H Mira, I have a tagline, it feels a little disingenuous.
Okay. Yeah, because your tagline can communicate your purpose.
Mhm.
Yep.
That's cool.
There was, if you can find this was in Harvard Business, probably I can't read that. It's been a while ago. I don't know if you can read that in the upper right,
Let's see.
but
What are you good
No.
at? What does it say?
well, no, what's the date? Oh, this is like really old, like 2005. But I thought it was good. How to lead with purpose. What are you good at? What do you enjoy? What feels most useful? This also kind of helps you. It's the questions that help you figure out, what's at the core of how you lead.
Yeah.
And so here's some examples. Hold on. I thought I'm going to show you 3 examples, because I think the other thing is getting it down to that benefit, that role is a good starting place. Putting it in a pithy statement that helps you be grounded in it and means something to you. That's a little bit of an art, and I'll talk about how I do that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I love. It's kind of like, wow, I love hammer the world into a better place.
Yeah.
What you think about that purpose is huge. Like the beneficiary is the world. But when you have, a brand as big as Bono and you have as much
Yeah.
as network, why not?
Well,
Yeah.
it almost implies resistance. That if you were,
Yeah.
when you're hammering in a nail, it doesn't go smooth. It doesn't go smoothly like Jello. You're not putting a nail into Jello. You're putting a nail into wood or something else that requires effort and sometimes force to make a difference. It's like he's willing to put effort into it and push through the resistance of people who maybe don't want a better place. Or it's kind of it's an interesting.
It is. Like, if this was someone I
analogy.
was working with, I would say, is it the entire world? Can you narrow the scope? Because I think one of the things Bono does is hammers the developing world, or developing
Mhm.
nations. And what's better? Better how? Better because they're into a better place because they're, just
What's
be able
the
to
outcome?
articulate that in part of your story.
Yeah. What does the outcome look like?
Yeah, is better, is better, on Maslow's hierarchy, is better
Mhm.
because you give them clean water and food? Is it better because you give them safety, secure? What is that? Have that story. And then Gates has, again, another lofty one.
Oh,
Guarantee every life has equal value, which is like, oh my gosh. I mean,
Yeah.
the Gates Foundation is amazing. It's very lofty.
Well,
Yeah.
I've always, even when I did strategic planning work for my company that I worked for, but any organization, when we would write the vision statement, I hear kind of a similarity to the way that we would write vision statements for companies. And it's that a real vision statement is so lofty that you never actually achieve it, but it's specific enough that whether you're going in the right direction or not. And so I feel like that is, Bill Gates won't be around when this happens, but he knows if his efforts are leading toward every life having equal value, even if there's never quite we get there.
And that's the legacy that he's leaving. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's it. Yeah. When I do strategy work with organizations, differentiating between vision and purpose can be tricky. Sometimes differentiating between mission, vision can be tricky, but I do find
mission, vision, and purpose are those get blended.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I have my definite, but
me too.
Both are, the thing with vision and mission, or vision and purpose, they're both highly aspirational. And I think that's one of the things that when you talk about your leadership brand, it's not who you are as a leader currently, but who do you desire to be long term?
Yep.
Absolutely.
I want to inject real quick because of the phrase you just used, H. One of the inputs into this process when I help people work on their vision is almost identical to the phrase that you just used. I ask them to think about the different, I use the word roles, but it's different from the roles that you had pulled up, but the roles in their life that are important to them, and fill in this phrase in a journaling exercise. I want to be the kind of blank who blank. And it's like, I want to be the kind of leader who, and then take some time to think about what, and it applies to being a father or a wife or, some other, maybe it's just employee. I want to be the kind of employee who does, or who is this way. And I talk about the distinction between, I'm not saying I want to be the kind of leader which would imply activities. I want to be the kind of leader that takes my team out to lunch once a month. It's like, no, that's just an activity. Maybe it's cool and that's interesting. And I'll bet your people would appreciate that, but that's not who you are. That's an activity that you do. What kind of leader do you want to be? I want to be the kind of leader who blank is this way with the people that I lead, or leaves this impression, or who people come to even when they're worried or they're not performing well, they can trust or rely on me. That to me has been a really valuable exercise for people who don't know where to start on their purpose statement, but gives them somewhere to go that helps them like Dana said, go to the future a little bit and think, well, this is what who I'd like to be, whether I'm there yet or not.
Or even take each of those roles and say, who's the stakeholder? So as father to your children, great. What do you want your children to say about you?
Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
By the way,
who's the stakeholder?
that's a Covey 7 habits when you do
Yeah.
your mission statement.
So at the Gallup Summit, Jay Shetty said, purpose equals habits plus passion plus strengths plus service, which I thought was interesting as an equation for purpose. So when you talk about as a father, what does that look like? What are the habits? What is the passion? What are your strengths? What is the service that you're bringing as a father, to your community, to your kids, to your family? So I thought that was interesting.
There were
Yeah,
4
that's
habits,
It's
passions,
purpose equals
strengths,
habit plus passion plus strengths plus service. These 4
service.
elements create purpose.
Yeah,
thought that
that's
was-
very similar to what I mean, mine, if I
Yeah.
did a formula, it's purpose equal your strengths plus your passion or your values, what you believe. So what you're good at, what you care about, and then your personality, which is kind of who you are. Because I do think I think that's one of the things we talk about this too is in the leadership brand is, personality shows up in first impressions, and first impressions, it's all about the first building warmth and building credibility. And it's like, how do you do that? I was working with someone recently, and they're highly introverted, right? So just poker face all the time.
Mhm.
And yet they're a musician. Their top 2 of their
Oh, no
top
way.
5 strengths were empathy and harmony. Harmony was number 1. And yet complete introvert, because I did a couple different assessments with them, which by the way was a real aha to me that, really strong introvert has no need for and not into social thinking, but has 2 of their top 5 as relationship building. And because it was empathy and harmony, I was like, whoa, is that because you're a musician?
Yeah.
And
That is
That heart.
right. That was fascinating. That's a
One
theory
other
of
quick
course.
thing that made me think about when you talked about introverts is how they get exposure with their brand if they're letting
Mhm.
everybody else talk, and how to help them find ways to get that exposure in their leadership role. If they're not a woo or, just a really outgoing person, but they have some amazing talents, they just happen to be introvert. So I
Yeah.
think that's another side of that that made me think of that when you brought up
Yeah, they
introverts.
have to be more intentional about it, I think, than
Right.
somebody with influencing
Right.
strengths.
Well, and this is where I go play to your strengths, right? So one of the things, the difference between an introvert and an extrovert is how they process. So extroverts, we think out loud, right? We're process work when we can be all over the place, or we can have a
Agreed.
lot of conversations. Introverts think before they think. So think before they speak. So
Mhm.
their strength is in their words. So
Yeah.
use your words to convey what your body language and facial expressions do not. Talk about what you care about, because before I care about what you know, I need to know you care. I will not get your caring except from your words. And if you think about, I can't remember the old formula, but it's like 70% of what people take away from your message is facial expressions and body language.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh wait, I got one more. Oprah's change. I thought this was interesting. Change the world through teaching. I was like, whoa.
She considers herself a teacher.
Because
Or
it's
the
kind of like
people-
what she's done in Africa, right? With the school and all that. But then
Yeah,
that she
but-
sees it, that's a piece of it, but she sees that as her overall umbrella brand.
I
Interesting.
thought it was interesting because I
Yeah.
think of her as also just a really good interviewer, and
Right.
that to me is more facilitation. But
But maybe what's important to her is the knowledge that she's facilitating, that she's extracting, is for everybody's benefit. And so she is, as the facilitator, she's facilitating teaching through the people she interviews. That is an interesting perspective, different way of looking at what she does through her own eyes based on her vision, or her purpose.
Which is one of the things, like in my purpose, when I talk about lift leaders through learning, the learning isn't H providing the knowledge, it's bringing the knowledge out from the purpose and from the group, which is what I see her as. Not that, by the way, I didn't model my purpose after Oprah. But.
Yeah.
That's totally a facilitator perspective, because I feel the same. I'll go into a session with people and did this when I was an early facilitator, and I was way below the level of the people that were in the room that I was telling what to do. But it was because the facilitator extracts information from the people who know. The facilitator doesn't know.
Yeah, well, that's
Right.
when I explain people what they say, what do you do? I go, well, I'm a facilitator. Oh, you're like a trainer? No. You're like a consultant? No. So if you're in education, you have all the knowledge and you disseminate it one way. If you're a trainer, there is knowledge in the content and you help the people learn it. When you're a facilitator, you show up with nothing and go, what do you guys want to talk about? You have all the brilliance. My job is to extract it. And when you're a consultant, you go in, take all the knowledge from the client and then regurgitate it as if it were your own.
I like that.
That's a great way to look at it, H. And I think what I would say to people who are coaches, leaders out there, rate yourself on a 1 to 10. Where's your passion with those areas? And I love facilitating and I love it. And I think we all share that in that.
Me too.
And we like to bring out the best from that group at that moment in time and help them create their best. You know, you're the guide. You're just the guide with this group of people at this moment in time, helping them be their best. So,
you know what we should do next time?
Wow, here comes some good ideas.
Right. Well, I mean, and I won't be
got
here.
3
I won't be
already.
here
Of
next
course,
time, so
he's already given us 3. And
I
he's
can
not gonna
say
be here.
whatever you guys should do next time. But I think it would be cool if we had more time today. I would have liked to do this, but and anybody listening, let me know what you think of this idea. But it might be cool to summarize next time some of the points that we talked about for purpose this time, but then actually take the people listening through writing their own purpose and have them share, if they're comfortable, share with us what their purpose statements are, and maybe share our own purpose statements, and like actually incorporate some of the exercises that we do with our clients into some of these conversations in the future, so they can. I would love to see the purpose statement of some of the people that listen in when we do these.
We could do that. We can definitely do that. Well, as usual, the time went by way too fast.
Yeah.
H, is there anything you want to, tie a bow around what we just talked about today, and kind of just some things for people to think about that you just a summary as we close down? I always like to kind of put a bow on the end.
Yeah, I would say, purpose should be anchored in that power source in your habits and values, and really we talk most about your strengths, because that will mean that living your purpose is more energy building and natural. And the other thing is pure purpose should be aspirational. I tell people I'm less worried that they get the statement right. I want them to understand who they are as a leader and what role they play, and really bring out and what they want to be best at, and just kind of anchor it there. And then the purpose statement, that's an art, and we certainly go through exercises to talk about that.
We got lots to talk about. Because I think we were going to talk about values next. So why don't we do that? We're going to do that on July 25th. So please, it looks like we've got a couple of people that have written thumbs up for today. Please share if you've got purpose statements you want to share with us. Send them in to one of us, either on our LinkedIn's. I think that would be great. And I'm excited. I think the biggest thing, my big takeaway today too, is not very many leaders are thinking about this. I think they think about it as their corporate brand, but they don't think about their personal brand and the energy they bring in the room and what that looks like, and intentionally how they can work on that. So all 3 of us have ways to work with clients on that. We want to make sure if you need help with that you reach out to one of us as well. So thank you, H. Micah, any closing remarks you want to make as we get ready to close out?
I'd actually like to just repeat a word that H just used a couple of times that I like to use a lot in these kinds of conversations, and it's the word anchor. What this does for you by having defined something like your purpose, it can serve as an anchor for your life and your decision making. If you realize, and that's why values I think are such a big part of this, is if you find yourself in a situation where the way that you're behaving, or the way that you're about to behave, or a decision that needs to be made is not aligned with your anchor or your purpose or your values, then you need to calibrate back to that anchor that keeps you in place, that is aligned with your values and your purpose. And it makes it easier to live according to your purpose and your values. When you're constantly using that as an anchor, it makes decision making easier. It makes you feel better about the work that you do, and you don't get distracted by things that don't matter as much when you have that anchor. So that just
Love that.
H used that word a couple of times too.
That's a good one. And it is a heart thing. It's not a head thing. It's what is your passion and who are you serving? So thank you so much, H, for leading through this. Thank you, Micah, for great comments. Micah, we're going to miss you on the 25th.
I know. I'll be
hopefully
busy.
you can, you'll be busy moving to Colorado, but you guys join us at noon Central Time on July 25th, and H and I will continue this conversation. And then Micah, when you're back, we'll be talking about purpose statements and all the other good ideas that came up today. So,
sounds good.
So thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care.
Thanks all.